Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to have him, given that in his various stints, he's been the Minister for IT and BT, and he's seen the actual Bangalore startup story happen right in front of his eyes. And, perhaps there's nobody better than him when it comes to contextualizing the entire ecosystem. So perhaps I need to start this conversation with Indian states becoming extremely competitive when it comes to attracting FDI, right? And Karnataka has been one of the biggest FDI garners when it comes to, when we look at states across India. What does it take for states today to sort of vie for FDI? What have you seen as the reason investors are today willing to commit FDI to any state for that matter?
Firstly, thank you so much for having me over. I wouldn't want to comment on how other states are doing with respect to incentives, subsidies. Well, everybody does that. And like you rightly mentioned, states are fiercely competitive. But what we do things differently in Karnataka is we do not pitch Karnataka as an investment destination. I pitch it as a destination for skills. I pitch it as a destination of knowledge. I pitch it as a destination of collaboration and co-creation. And I think that is what makes the difference. We have built the ecosystem of skilling, incubators, centers of excellence, accelerators. We have topped it up with policies. We have topped up with budgetary allocation. And like I mentioned earlier, this entire pyramid has been built with collaboration. So the policies that we make also has come by the industry, of the industry, for the industry. It's a consultative process.
But what do companies ask for when perhaps you're doing your tours or when you go and meet outside? What does the conversation look like from the government to the private sector today?
Well, it's very difficult to attract investments. There is no doubt in that. But Government of Karnataka has been doing this for long. And our policies speak for it. We were the first one to come up with the IT policy, the first ones for BT policy, the first ones for engineering and research and development. We were the first ones to come up with cyber security. We were the first ones to come up with the Global Capability Center policy. We were the first one to come up with the animation, visual effects, gaming and comics policy, biotech policy, space tech policy for state. So, and how did these policies come in? We have EV policy or the battery storage policy. Everything we were the first. And we did that because we keep our ears to the ground. We were able to deliver on that because we have a very, very close interaction with the industry leaders, figuring out what they want to do, figuring out where the technology is headed, what are the disruptions expected, and we form policies around that. And I think while a lot of my neighbors have to dole out much more subsidies, much more incentives, make promises that they might or might not be able to deliver, Karnataka is in a better plane. And that data speaks for itself, whether it's about the startup data, whether it's about the GCC data, whether it's about the IT exports data, or whether it's about the GCC data. I mean, you have the numbers with you.
Now moving the conversation to deep tech, given that, the policy around deep tech and also the focus, want to understand from you, given that this deep tech companies require a lot more when it comes to gestation period, and the policies of government can step in only to a certain extent. What is your own sense on when should the private sector capital step in, and where do you think the government's support should stop, and when do you think the private sector has to step in actively to support a better ecosystem?
Oh, that's a very difficult thing to handle. While the private sector is not ready to take the greater risks of seed capital, the government can step in. So we have something called the Elevate program, which has been running phenomenally well. No other state in India has funded early stage funding, seed capital, for 1,300 startups. And that has ensured that they raise a second round of funding. That has ensured that they get the right kind of mentoring required from corporates. That has ensured that they get incubation access to our accelerators. They are a part of our market access programs where we showcase them in trade shows in across geographies. And that's what we can do initially. And when they get picked up by the private sector, of course, capital flows in, the mentorship comes in, they end up as a mature thing. Ultimately, what they have to sell their product or service to whom? To either the private sector or the government sector. So we also have a public procurement policy wherein if you have a service or a product that the government can use, we relax the rules for you. So where the government itself becomes your first customer. So we are doing everything we can. So even if you are adopted by a larger corporate, you have a solution that the government can use, we take that also. So if we start up as early funders, as a seed capital, we also end up as being their customers. So it is like an infinite loop. And once the solution is good enough, you are entrenched in the government system. So that is one thing. The other thing you spoke about was gestation periods. Yes, especially biotech firms and deep tech firms. We also play the long-term game. So we announced the deep tech decade. No state in India has this program. For the next 10 years, the government of Karnataka is going to focus on deep tech decade. We are going to fund disruptions and innovations up to 1 crore. Up to 1 crore. No equity will be taken from those startups. And these innovations will also be given an opportunity to work with the government if it is good enough. So even we are going to partner with them in the longer journey. We want to travel far. We want to ensure that we are as disruptive as the startups. And more importantly, the government is ready to unlearn and relearn. And that, I think that is what is very important for governments to do right now.
And of course, you're crisscrossing around Bangalore every other day, inaugurating GCCs, opening their offices in Bangalore. Going back a few decades, again, like I said, there's nobody better than you when it comes to context, right? Bangalore has been sort of known for the IT services sector that once defined the work culture of Bangalore. And now, GCCs have already become the largest, they've overtaken IT services when it comes to providing employment in the last couple of years, according to NASSCOM's own data. Do you see identity of Bangalore sort of changing in the next coming few years from being IT capital to GCC capital, or it's going to be a completely MNC-led city, and homegrown companies were a thing of the past kind of a decade for Bangalore?
See, Bengaluru is probably the most restless idea of India right now. I'm sure if a lot of people over here who have lived in Bengaluru would be, when they ask, where would you stay, they would say, we are Garden City of India, Lake City of India, the pensioners' paradise. Now we are called the most disruptive city in the world, one of the most disruptive cities in the world. We are placed number 5 in the top AI cities when it comes to skill and research. We are number 8 in the startup ecosystem. And we are the 4th largest technology cluster. So, and we have moved up the value chain. So, like you rightly pointed out, while we were into IT services, now the GCCs have come in. We are inventing for the world from our backyard. We are having high number of IPs being registered. And the government itself is encouraging startups to ensure that they get innovations with more IPs, whether it's in the orange economy, the creator economy, or whether it's in long-term disruptions in biotech, aerospace, agriculture, anything. We are encouraging startups to think out of the box, get IPs, because if with the disruption that we are seeing with AI, I think we need to scale up the value chain much more quickly than we would have thought we could.
The other thing, perhaps for states which are growing much above the national average growth rate, right? Uh,
How many only are?
but in terms of, when we look at the entire structure of decision making in India, are there any areas when it comes to you want a lot more decentralization where states that are growing can grow faster if, a lot of bottlenecks are taken away? I mean, I remember this because last year you had tweeted where some sort of, you had to go to the US for something and then, you didn't get a permission, which actually sounded pretty ridiculous, right? Why would any state need a
Well,
permission?
you need to
right?
ask that question to the government of India because ultimately, see, we are one of the strongest and biggest economic engines for the nation, and we have led by example. So why would the central government deny us permissions to go abroad to do a road show, which falls well within the ambit of the federal structure, which falls well within the ambit of what the ME has described? What was surprising is that when we asked for permission for a delegation that is led by me for investments, it gets rejected. I take off my name, I put the same destinations, I put the same meeting schedule, I put the same agenda and the same people, it gets approved. So what should I think?
But are
So
there
the
any
problem,
areas
it seems
where
like
you
the problem is me.
Are there any areas specifically where you think that decision making needs to be sort of
No, see,
actively
ultimately,
deal-
whom does it benefit if Bangalore progresses? It benefits the ecosystem. Just go towards Whitefield. You will mistake it for Noida. We are absorbing, we are creating so many jobs. We are absorbing so many people who are coming looking for jobs. In fact, when we address the 16th Finance Commission, one of the reasons, one of the strongest points that we advocated to them was that, look, we are the ones creating jobs. We need more money to create infrastructure. Please give us, devolve more taxes for us. So if I'm paying 100 rupees to the central government, I'm just getting back 13. I'm not saying give back 100. In a federal structure, yes, we need to share our revenues with other states of North India or Northeast India. We have no problems with that. But don't shortchange us. We are the ones who are driving the economy. We are the ones creating jobs. And if you devolve more of your taxes, we are going to create more infrastructure, which is going to drive the economy more. And all I'm saying is, okay, instead of 13 rupees, give me a 25 rupees. How is it that UP is getting 250 rupees, 280 rupees, Bihar is getting 333 rupees for every 100 rupees they are paying? My argument is simple: devolve more so that we will contribute back to the economy more.
Before we perhaps go to the audience for question, one thing on which I wanted to get your thoughts is on this entire social media ecosystem, right? Be it on all the platforms. In Karnataka's budget, we were talking about restricting the use of social media to underage kids. What is the policy sort of framework that you're looking at when it comes to handling social media? Because it's again very complicated. You have legal complications that might come up. So how do you make this work if there has to be any restriction going forward on social media?
Firstly, there's a false narrative that Karnataka wants to ban social media. We don't want to ban social media. We just want to regulate it. I'll give you some data. We have more than 1.8 crore children below the age of 17 years. And more than 70% of them are on one social media platform or another. And more than 60% of them are exposed to inappropriate content. More than 43% of them are exposed to cyberbullying and other things. And of course, the cyber fraud, the digital arrests that are happening is another level. Now, as a teenager or as a parent, would I want to be exposed to inappropriate content? Or as a parent, would you want your child to be exposed to inappropriate content that could be violent in nature, that could be sexual in nature, or anything? And we are not. All we are trying to say is that let's let everybody in the society or all the stakeholders be more responsible. Let parents be more responsible while regulating social media or mobile usage or internet usage with their kids. Let education institutions come out with a policy on allowing mobile or other gadgets in their campuses. Let social media platforms tweak their algorithms, tweak their technology so that such content is not flagged to kids underage. And me as a government, I also have to be responsible enough to bring in a policy that will ensure that while I encourage digital usage, digital learning, I still don't push children here. Because if I'm going to have a knee-jerk reaction and ban social media, it is just the kids are just going to unregulated sites. Like, look what's happening to the real money gaming issue. Have people stopped online gambling? Have people stopped betting online? No. They're just not doing it on Indian servers. They're going to Chinese servers or Eastern European servers, and they're still losing money. We are still getting complaints of cyber frauds or loss of money. And that's what is going to happen here also. The last thing I want is my child to be on an unregulated social media platform. So let's all play a part. We are consulting. We will ensure that we will consult all the stakeholders. We'll come up with a policy that is good enough for the state. We will advocate to the center also. Like you rightly pointed out, it cannot be done only by me. It has to be done by the social media platforms. I have to talk to the central government, but at least let us start a positive advocacy for the same.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your incredible insights. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it up with a big round of applause. I would now like to call forward Mr. Saurav Majumdar, the Editor-in-Chief, Fortune India, to please come forward. Sir, I would like you to please wait on stage. And Mr. Sahil Shetty, the CEO of Fortune India and Open Media, to please come forward and present a token of our appreciation to Priyanka Age, sir.